Hello and welcome to Daily Math Problems. So this is a beginning class for Calculus 1, and we're going to start with the first topic, which would be a classification of functions example. So we're just going to be doing daily math problems for Calculus 1, one each day. So topic 1 is going to be classification of functions. This is an example problem, and the question is what is being asked is to classify each of these functions as the following: either a power function, or a root function, or a polynomial function, or a rational function, or an algebraic function, or a trig function, or an exponential function, or a logarithmic function. And these classes, by the way, are not mutually exclusive. So the first example here is f of x equal to the log base 2 of x. What kind of function is this? Well, this really is a logarithmic function. This is a logarithmic function. And hopefully that is clear from the context. How about g of x equal to the fourth root of x? Well, I think first thing we should do is rewrite this. And you should know this by now, that this can be rewritten in terms of powers of x. So this is the same thing as g of x is equal to x to the 1/4 power. Okay? And so any kind of power function can be written as x to the power a. This is a power function. That's the definition. Interestingly enough, a polynomial function can be written in a way like this as well, as long as a is a integer power. So in this case, a is not an integer power, so this cannot be a polynomial function. And every polynomial function happens to also be a rational function, but again, in this case, neither one of those applies. So in this particular example, this is really just a power function. Okay, so let's move on to another one. We have h of x, which is equal to 2 times x to the 3rd power divided by 1 minus x squared. Okay, so notice that this is, if I look at just the top term, this would be something that looks like a power function, except for it has a coefficient in the front. So because of that, this is going to end up being called a polynomial. And then beneath it, we also have 1 minus x squared, which is also a polynomial. So we're dividing a polynomial by another polynomial, and this kind of a thing, when you have a polynomial divided by a polynomial, is called a rational function. So this is just a rational function. And we'll see later why being able to classify functions is helpful, because classification of functions helps us to determine how to solve problems involving these functions. Okay. So now let's look at u of t equal to 1 minus 1.1 times t plus 2.54 times t squared. Well, really, this is the sum of polynomial. This is the sum of power of different powers of t. In this case, the first one, we like to think of it as t to the 0th power. There are some kinds of complications with that, but for the moment, let's just think of it as t to the 0th power. And then we have t to the 1st power and t to the 2nd power. So these are all integer powers of t. And then obviously they have different coefficients in front. So 1, minus 1.1, and plus 2.54. So this is actually a polynomial. But interestingly, every polynomial is also a rational function. So it's also a rational function. And the reason that every polynomial is a rational function is because a rational function is a polynomial divided by another polynomial, and a perfectly allowable polynomial is the number 1. The number 1 by itself is a polynomial. So if you just divide this function by 1, which obviously gives you the same thing back, then you can think of it as also a rational function. And then the final one that we're going to look at in this example is w of theta equal to sine of theta times cosine squared of theta. And this one is just straight out a trigonometric function. So we're going to call this a trig function. And as I mentioned, there's a reason why we want to be able to classify all of these different kinds of functions. So at some point in the course of your of calculus, you'll find out that there are different types of functions are going to require taking, say, the derivative in a different way. So we have different tricks for different kinds of functions. So being able to see what kind of function each one is going to be a really useful tool in the future. That's all that I have for this video, and hopefully I see you again soon.